Greetings from DELNET Developing Library Network, New Delhi, India. The esteemed speakers, Dr. Jonathan Loar and Dr. Charlotte Giles, South Asian Reference Specialist from Asian Division, Library of Congress, Washington, D.C., USA. Mrs. Chaya Sharma, Library Director, American Center, New Delhi, India. The officials from the field offices of Library of Congress and American Center Libraries from across the globe. DELNET officials, Shri K. Jayakumar, President, Dr. S.S. Murthy, Vice President, Dr. P.R. Goswami, Treasurer, eminent librarians, library and information science professionals, faculty members, researchers, scholars, and students, my colleagues here at DELNET New Delhi and also its coordination units at Bangalore and Pune, ladies and gentlemen. I, Dr. Sangeeta Kaul, Director DELNET, on behalf of DELNET, takes profound privilege and honor in welcoming you all for joining us today from various parts of India and many other countries, including Bhutan, Germany, Iceland, Japan, Kuwait, Nepal, Oman, Sri Lanka, United Republic of Tanzania, UK, USA, and Zambia, to the inaugural webinar session of the newly launched webinar series of DELNET entitled Libraries Around the World. At the very outset, we express our very warm, sincere gratitude to all of you for an overwhelming response to the webinar session, as more than 1,600 participants have registered from across the globe. I'm glad to share with you that DELNET Developing Library Network, New Delhi, India, is the single largest library network in South Asia, connecting more than 9,700 institutions spread across the country, including universities, colleges, institutions of national importance, medical health hospitals, and many more. It also has its member institutions outside India, including in the countries in Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Kazakhstan. The newly launched webinar series, Libraries Around the World, aims to take professionals on a virtual journey across continents, exploring diverse library systems, unique collections, innovative services, and best practices being followed globally in libraries. Each webinar session will feature insights from the distinguished librarians, professionals, and library leaders who will share inspiring stories and experiences from their own countries and their own libraries. The webinar series aspires to broaden perspectives, encourages knowledge exchange, and foster collaborations among the library professionals. We are pleased to organize the inaugural webinar session today on South Asian materials at Library of Congress, USA, the most renowned and gigantic national library of the United States of America, having the world's largest library collections. We are extremely honored to have with us today the two most distinguished library experts with a remarkable specialization in South Asian studies who have joined us from Library of Congress, Washington, D.C., on behalf of DELNET and also on behalf of each one of us from across the globe. We extend a very warm, hearty welcome to Dr. Jonathan Loar and also to Dr. Charlotte Giles. We express our very sincere gratitude and thanks to both of you for sparing your valuable time and in acceding to our request in being there with us. Thank you so very much indeed, Dr. Jonathan and also Dr. Charlotte, and making this webinar session, a truly memorable one. My very special thanks and appreciation also for a very long time professional colleague, a wonderful colleague, whom I have been knowing for more than 2 decades, Mrs. Chaya Sharma, the Library Director at American Center, New Delhi, for her very gracious support in making it possible for us to connect with our distinguished speakers. I now have an immense pleasure in introducing our esteemed speakers to our participants. I have a pleasure in apprising you all that Dr. Jonathan Loar, our distinguished speaker of today, is a South Asian Reference Specialist in the Asian Division of at the Library of Congress. He received a doctorate in West and South Asian religions from Emory University in 2016 and joined the library later that year. His graduate coursework included lots of language study in Hindi, Marathi, and Sanskrit. And I'm very happy to inform you all, and my Indian colleagues from India would be very, very happy that Dr. Jonathan Loar's dissertation focused on the life and legacy of Baba Shirdi Sai Baba, an important saint. We all are fully being aware, and we are greatly, greatly impressed, with this such a scholarly work of Dr. Jonathan Loar. Dr. Jonathan Loar in the Asian Division also works with the colleagues to manage and develop the South Asian collection and provides reference services in the Asian reading room. He also provides content review of the division's research guides, assistance cataloging South Asian manuscripts, and enjoys learning about the library's institutional history. It's a profound honor and pleasure in welcoming you, Dr. Jonathan, and we cannot really thank you enough for giving us such a wonderful opportunity to interact with you and to know about the works that you are being undertaking, and also especially your vast interest in the South Asian studies. Thank you so very much indeed. I have now an enormous pleasure in welcoming Dr. Charlotte Giles, who is a South Asian reference specialist in the Asian division at the Library of Congress, USA. Thank you so very much once again, Dr. Charlotte, for making it possible to have you here and for the, such a great support that you have extended. We have greatly admired, your being here with us today. I'm very pleased and honored to inform you all that Dr. Charlotte joined the division in 2019. She completed her doctorate from the University of Texas at Austin in 2021 in Asian cultures and languages. Her research interest and courseware included the study of Urdu and Persian languages and literature, Indo-Islamic civilization, and gender issues, with her dissertation focusing on labor, gender, and textiles in North India. As a reference specialist, Dr. Charlotte works with her colleagues in the management and development of South Asian collections. She also provides reference services in the Asian Reading Room. Dr. Charlotte's recent works including collaborating with the international collection librarians on international political events, web archive, and enhancing the discoverability of South Asian ephemera collections on microfiche. A favorite project has been the gathering of oral histories through interviews with employees who have served at the library for many years. Indeed, an honor and pleasure to have both of you with us today. I would not like to, be between our participants who have joined us from various nooks and parts of the world and our distinguished speakers. May I have the pleasure, profound honor and pleasure in requesting Dr. Jonathan Loar to start the deliberations. It's over to you, Dr. Jonathan.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sangeeta. And just to check, is my audio coming in okay?
It's perfect, perfectly fine.
Okay, great. So I will go ahead and start the slideshow here. And if at any point my audio goes out, or if the slideshow does not advance or anything like that, just please let me know. But just a big welcome to everyone, and a thank you for joining us today across several different time zones. And a big thank you to Dr. Sangeeta, Ms. Chaya Sharma, the DELNET organizing team for inviting us to speak today. So as Dr. Sangeeta mentioned, my name is Jonathan Loar. I typically go by John, and Charlotte and I are here today to talk to you about South Asian materials at the Library of Congress. And we're very honored to give this presentation for DELNET in the series of highlighting libraries across the world. One thing to note here is that you have our email addresses, our names, and our titles on this slide. You are most welcome at any point to write to us directly. We also have an Ask a Librarian service that we're going to be talking about a lot during this presentation, which is the main way that we handle all sorts of reference questions from the general public. Either way is either through direct email or through Ask a Librarian. We would definitely appreciate the chance to talk with you more after the presentation as well. So we're just going to go over the agenda in brief. So Charlotte and I are aiming to keep this to about 45 minutes so that we have time for questions afterwards. And just as a note that we do not have a hard stop after 60 minutes. If we have some more questions and some more engagement after that 60-minute time, and if people can stay around, we're happy to answer questions afterwards as well. So the first thing we're going to do is give just a very short overview of the Library of Congress here in Washington, D.C. And then we're going to move into the Asian division and the Asian Reading Room, which is where Charlotte and I work. We're also going to talk about the South Asian collection at the Library of Congress in terms of its size, its scope, methods of acquisition, our collection strengths, and some examples of our recent work in things like cataloging, preservation, digitization, as well as activities in outreach and collaboration. So to get started, we're going to begin just the Library of Congress, as some of you may know, is the oldest United States federal cultural institution with its establishment on April 24th in the year 1800. So with over 225 years of history, it's also a very big federal institution. It's the world's largest library with some 178 million items. About 470 languages and dialects are represented across the collections. In Washington, D.C., we have 3 buildings. We have 20 different reading rooms. There are offsite storage facilities in Maryland. There's an audio video conservation center in Virginia. It's a very big place. So we always want people to know that people like Charlotte and myself, librarians, that we're here and we're here to answer questions, whether it's about wayfinding and trying to get you to the right place in the Library of Congress for your research interests, or if it's trying to help you find specific collection materials. And the best way to really go about that kind of self-discovery, self-exploration of what we have in our collections is to use our online catalog. So we have that URL here on the slide, and I encourage everyone to play around with it, to do some searching and some filtering, and that's really how you can learn what we have. As you are most likely very well aware, you know, the works that are in South Asian languages will appear in transliteration, which can be very tricky to decipher. It means you need to have some familiarity with the ALA LC romanization tables for South Asian languages. And the good news is that going forward, this was just a recent announcement, that some of our new bibliographic records that are being created will have metadata in vernacular scripts. So in Devanagari, Bangla, Tamil, Telugu, new records are going to start having vernacular language scripts to enhance discoverability, and that metadata will be available in those scripts. Not everything is going to be in those scripts, but that's going to help people discover things more efficiently. Nonetheless, if you were having trouble finding materials in the online catalog, that's a very good reason to reach out to us through that Ask a Librarian link. We get those kinds of questions all the time. So now I want to zoom in on where Charlotte and I work. So the Asian division, as you can see here described on the left, contains about 5 million physical items in 200 Asian languages. So that means we have in our division things like books, newspapers, manuscripts, rare books, journals, all sorts of microform, primarily in Asian languages. And the Asian division itself is divided up into these 7 collections. So we have a Chinese collection, we have a Japanese collection, Korean, Mongolian, South Asian, Southeast Asian, and Tibetan, the 7 collections. And each of those collections has 1 or 2 reference librarians like Charlotte and myself for targeted assistance with the languages and the materials of that area of the world of those languages. Altogether, we have about 22 staff currently, and we occasionally have volunteers and interns who work with us for some of the year as well. So the Asian division is kind of like the bureaucratic side of things where the collections are housed, and it's like a custodial division. And then on the right is the Asian reading room. So this is the public space where librarians meet with our researchers, we meet with our patrons, and that's where we bring out the materials, and that's where the research happens. And you can see just kind of a short little picture, an image here of what the reading room looks like on the right. I definitely recommend that you bookmark the Asian Reading Room website because this is the best source of information on the Asian collections. This gives you easy access, for example, to all of our research guides and collection overviews. And those research guides really provide a whole lot of depth and information on all the unique aspects of Asian language materials at the Library of Congress. The website for the Asian Reading Room also points to our digital collections, most of which are fully open access. Now, some collections, including some of the web archives, will contain items that are in copyright. And the way we handle that is that those materials are accessible on site at the Library of Congress when you are joined to the Library of Congress Wi-Fi network. But that's a minority of our digital collections. The vast majority is open access, and we aim for open access as much as possible with our digital projects. And we also have a new, relatively new, South Asian digital collection, and I'm going to talk more about that later on today. And I did want to mention one more thing, that the Asian division has a unique fellowship for using the Asian collections. It's called the Florence Tan Mosen Fellowship. It's a competitive fellowship for a maximum of about $3,000 for travel to Washington, D.C. to use the Asian collections in the reading room for a minimum of 5 business days. And of course, some researchers are staying longer than those 5 business days. We evaluate proposals every year in the Asian division, and usually we have about one fellow per collection each year. So that's a total of about 6 or 7 of these fellows. More information is on the Asian Reading Room website. The Mosen Fellowship just opened up for this year, so we are now taking applications, and the deadline is December 14th. However, please make sure to see the information on the website, including the information on the visas and the statuses that are necessary for this fellowship as it comes from a US federal government institution. So now we're going to dig in a little bit more into the South Asian collection, and we're going to start with a little bit of history. And for anyone who is interested in institutional history, I'm happy to talk more offline. This is kind of an interest, becoming an interest of mine. But for now, I just want to go over the first half of a timeline on South Asia at the Library of Congress to give you some background. So we start in the year 1904. And that is the year the Library of Congress purchased the personal library of Albrecht Weber. It's a name you might be familiar with. He was a German Indologist. I believe he passed away in 1902. And Albrecht Weber had amassed an impressive collection of 4,000 books, articles, pamphlets, all on classical Indological scholarship. So mostly dealing with things like Sanskrit, Prakrit, things like that. But he also had 60 handwritten copies of Sanskrit manuscripts that had been that were housed at German libraries. He had handwritten copies of those made. So the Library of Congress purchased this in 1904 because at the time we really did not have any Indic materials or any South Asian materials to speak of. So by acquiring this personal library, this was kind of building the foundation and addressing a collection gap that we had at that time. So we're jumping now to the next big year, that's 1938. And at that time, if you're thinking about world history, it's close to the start of World War II, and interest is beginning to grow in the United States about having knowledge at libraries and research institutions about these different world regions, and including South Asia. So the Library of Congress pursued and received a Carnegie Foundation grant, and that was used to hire a Sanskrit scholar from the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. His name was Horace Pullman. And Horace Pullman, his job was to basically establish the South Asian collection. So he made several acquisition trips to what was at the time British India, and he established relationships with government printing houses and some private publishers. And what began from that was the more systematic acquisition of materials, new materials that were being published in British India. And so those materials began to come into the Library of Congress selectively, but on a more routine, meaning a more annual basis. Pullman also, during his acquisition trips, he purchased about 500 manuscripts from different locations. And we still have these under a series that we still call the Indo-Aryan MS series, the Indo-Aryan manuscript series. These were primarily Sanskrit. Some of them were complete. Many of them are only 1 folio, 2 folio, 3 folios, mostly from the 19th century, and mostly on things that are like Hindu religious topics, philosophy, a few things on grammar, a few things on kind of the sciences and things like that. But for now, with kind of the early part out of the way, I will turn it over to my colleague Charlotte and move on to this next slide here. Charlotte, would you like to talk about the PL480 program and other things?
Sure thing. Just to confirm, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sounds good.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to jump ahead to the early 1950s. This is really when collecting South Asian materials really starts in earnest for the US. This is the beginning of the PL480 program. That PL480 program was created alongside the Indian Emergency Assistance Act of 1951. This was really a program that was born out of the Cold War, an attempt for the US to start gathering more materials to enable scholars, American scholars, to learn more about different parts of the world, specifically the Middle East, North Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia. And this was really a program that involved the exchange of surplus wheat from the US with books and materials from all of these regions. And this program operated from 1951, as you can see, until 1958. Starting in 1957, there's a LC collaboration with the American Council of Learned Societies and SSRC, and this is to convene what at that point was called the Conference on American Library Resources on Southern Asia, otherwise known as CalROSA, and this later developed into CONSULT, which continues to exist today. This is a committee that is comprised of North American librarians. We meet twice every year, and the purpose of this is really to encourage the collaboration and sort of awareness of what is happening with various universities and research institutions regarding their South Asian collections. 1951, PL 480 program transfers into this program that is called Food for Peace. Again, this is sort of born out of the Cold War environment in the US. What I remember reading from a memo that one of the quotes was that food assistance is better than a bomb. So this was kind of the political environment that was present at that time. PL 480 program beginning official formal operations with the Library of Congress for the acquisition of foreign language materials, again, primarily focusing on materials in Africa, Middle East, and South Asia. And I will say that the Library of Congress was involved at the beginning of this PL 480 program in 1951. I think that was something, as I have been doing research about this period of time, that was something that really stuck out to me, was that Library of Congress was really a major part of this development of South Asian collections in libraries in North America. And this is really when, again, American libraries begin receiving materials through LC, not just for the Library of Congress, but for American libraries in general. And this PL 480 acquisition program then again transitions from the Food for Peace program into the Library of Congress's first overseas operations field office in 1962, and that is the New Delhi office. 1965, we have the establishment of the Pakistan field office in Karachi, and that later shifts to Islamabad in 1995, where it continues to operate from the US Embassy compound. Next slide, please. This is just a super helpful map that's going to give you an idea of where the current operating overseas operations field offices are. There used to be many more. Now we are down to 6 of these. As you see, we have one in Rio de Janeiro, and that covers Brazil, French Guinea, Guyana, Suriname, and Uruguay. And I'm not going to go ahead and list those because you can see those on the map, but Cairo office, Nairobi office, Islamabad, New Delhi, and the Jakarta office. Jakarta covers all of Southeast Asia. Islamabad office covers Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and Tajikistan. The New Delhi office covers Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Maldives, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. And these are the 2 offices that John and I work the most with. Next slide. This is a wonderful slide showing some of the folks that we work over in our South Asian overseas field offices. We have the image of the acquisitions teams over in the New Delhi office, the serial team down at the bottom, again in that New Delhi office, and the Islamabad office team. And I have visited both of these offices, which was really a fantastic pleasure, considering John and I work very closely with them, primarily through email. And after having worked with these folks, it was really lovely to meet them in person And what stands out to me is, I mean, many things stand out to me when I met these folks, but just sort of the amount of work and acquisition that they are able to do under considering the size of their teams. All of the acquisitions, microfilming, having these large networks that enable them to do such expansive acquisitions in as many languages as they do, and the sheer linguistic prowess when it comes to cataloging as many languages as they do. It's really an amazing thing, the amount of work that they're able to do. And they work not just with Jonathan and I, but with numerous libraries across North America in bolstering the South Asian library collections, not just for us. Next slide, please. This is just a lovely little graphic showing some of the languages that John and I, that the South Asian collection at the Library of Congress has. Again, 1 million South Asian physical items, and the correction from an earlier slide that John showed that we actually have more around 200 South Asian languages. This is just a small sample, so you'll see we have Kashmiri, Marathi, Bangla, Persian, Tamil, Kuruk. We have a number of sort of smaller, lesser known South Asian languages. So we're not just talking the more commonly heard languages that you would have heard of, but Dogri, Kuruk, in addition to Malayalam, Telugu, Kannada, Gujarati, Konkani, and a number of others. Next slide, please. Lovely little pie chart just to give you an idea of sort of the percentages, the linguistic representation that we have in the collection. Just a quick note that these are the numbers and percentages from July 2021. So things have changed, but in terms of sort of the rough idea of like how our collection is sized per language, this is still a fairly accurate representation. So you'll see it's actually other languages that are not listed here that comprises the largest chunk of our collection. Next, you have Hindi, then Urdu, Bengali, Tamil, Marathi, Telugu, Kannada, Gujarati, Punjabi, Malayalam, Nepali, and then Sanskrit. So this just sort of gives you again an idea of the languages and sort of what our collection is comprised of. Next slide, please. Collection strengths. So deep coverage of South Asian publications. After the establishment, particularly after the establishment of the 2 field offices, first in India in 1962, and then Pakistan in 1965. In addition to this deep coverage that is covered by those field offices, this is bolstered by targeted acquisitions that Jonathan and I will sort of come across in our research. And we will make these recommendations. And all of this work is really guided by the Library of Congress's internal collection policy statements. In addition to targeted acquisitions that John and I recommend, the library field offices are working deeply with the South Asian librarians at other North American universities and colleges. So they are also working on their own niche collections outside of the materials that they're acquiring regularly from those 2 field offices. John had mentioned that we have extensive holdings of South Asian newspapers and serials. Just a few, just to give you a taste of some of those items in terms of pre-1947 vernacular newspapers, such as the Gujarati, Medina, Ismaili, and Swadesh Amitra. And but that collection of South Asian newspapers and serials becomes especially rich after the establishment of our field offices. For more information about our newspapers and serial holdings, we recommend looking at we have two for now, research guides. One is focused specifically on newspapers. Our holdings are the extensive holdings are largely on microfilm and microfiche, particular microfilm. So when you check out those research guides, you'll notice a heavy emphasis on microfilm newspapers. All of the microfilming happens in our overseas field offices in India specifically. We have a second research guide that focuses on South Asian women serials. Again, both of these guides are constantly being updated. So we recommend sort of revisiting those for researchers to continue to go back to those and see what new acquisitions we will have. Sorry, next slide, please. This is a particularly special collection that we have. It's a closed collection. It is the South Asian ephemera collection on microfiche, and we also have a pamphlet collection, South Asian pamphlet collection. Over 2,000 records. These are roughly organized by thematic through thematic subcollections, and then following that thematic division, they are further divided into multiple parts. So when we talk about ephemera, we're thinking materials such as pamphlets, newsletters, reports, individual newspaper issues, dramas, and leaflets. And the way that these were acquired by the library, a number of different ways. For some of the records, you will notice that we have materials dating back to the mid-19th century. And this collection halted in, I believe it was 2015. So you'll see we have almost over a 150-year coverage of ephemeral material. It's just mind-boggling. For example, we have just a couple of examples of the things that we have. Politics and government in Pakistan, the Kashmir question, post-1947 publications from Pakistan. We also have pre-1947 publications related to Kashmir. Domestic violence, women in India. Taking the example of women in India, we have multiple parts. So Women in India, part 1, up to, I believe it is part 13. So that's an example of specifically the ephemera collection. We also have the South Asian pamphlet collection. Those are different from the microfiche ones. These are physical items that we have retained. If you check out the records for those, some of them have detailed examples. If you also just briefly going back to the ephemera collection, you'll notice under those records that we have digitized indexes. So when researchers come across a record, Women in India Part 1, they're able to go through our record and see a link for a digitized index to see specifically what is in each of those parts, which is fantastic. Next slide, please. South Asian Rare Book Collection, over 1,000 rare books and manuscripts. A good number of these are cataloged, but we do have a number of items that are uncatalogued. So if any of your researchers or you are interested in learning more about what we have, we highly recommend reaching out to John or myself, because what you will find on our catalog, on the library catalog, catalog.loc.gov, that is not a comprehensive list of all of the materials that we have in this collection. That being said, to sort of get an idea of the materials that we do have, you can search our catalog, search South Asian Rare Book Collection, and you will see all of the items that are cataloged. In order to access our South Asian Rare Book Collection in person in the Asian Reading Room, an appointment is required 3 to 5 business days in advance, just so John and I have time to go and pull those materials for you. We do have an Asian Rare Book Policy Agreement, a list of various bullet points that the researcher agrees to when they are using our materials. A lot of this is sort of preservation concerns and ensuring that those materials continue to be available for future scholars. And in addition to that, we have a rare book request form. Again, this is sort of just a detailed list of each of the items that the researcher will be using during their visit. Next slide. These are just a few examples of some of the rare items that we have in our collection. You'll see we have a beautiful illustrated version of the Tale of Sudama. This is dated 1945 to 46. And I will quickly say that a number of the materials in our South Asian Rare Book Collection are digitized. So some of these, for a number of materials that are in the Rare Book Collection, you do need to come and visit in person. But you'll see when you visit the catalog, if you type in South Asian Rare Book Collection, you click on a record, some of those may be digitized. There's a special link that will send you to that digitized item. Just a sort of fun collection that we have a few items of old Snakes and Ladders board games. Some of these, they're in Tamil, Hindi, and English. And then a really special part of our collection that we have that is digitized is Hindustan. This was a newspaper that was published in Berlin before and during World War I. Both of these 2 editions that we have in Hindi and in Urdu, these were published primarily for Indian POWs. So definitely, and these are newspapers that have been highly requested and used by our researchers. Next slide. Web archiving. We mentioned this sort of at the beginning, that this is a special pet project of mine. Web archives. This is something that we have worked with our overseas field offices closely. Before actually, they were the folks that really got things going. So before John and I got involved, this was something that the Islamabad and Delhi office really spearheaded. So you'll see this is just sort of a brief list of some of the collections that we do have that are ongoing. Just as a quick aside, the Asian division does work very closely with the African and Middle Eastern division. So you'll see that that heading at the top, that we are working closely with those divisions for the development of these web archives. This is primarily because the way that in terms of how the library is divided along, yes, geographic lines, but also linguistic and format lines. So all of the materials that are from South Asia that are in Persian and Arabic, those are all held in the African and Middle Eastern division. So you'll see just with these web archives, coverage of Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan, and Tajikistan. We have the government web archive. We have presidential and general elections web archives. We have gender issues web archives. We have an Indian political and social issues web archive, Indian government web archive, and all of those web archives that I just listed, those are all ongoing. We have a Kashmir legal status in 2019 web archive that is closed, but a number of those websites have been transferred into the Indian political and social issues web archive. So researchers are still able to access the ongoing crawling of those websites. We also have the Maldives government web archive. This is a relatively recent one that has been released. For more information about that, there's actually a blog post online, an interview. This was one of the web archives that I initiated. So for more information about that, you can refer to the Library of Congress's blogs and read a bit more about that. There are a number of library web archives: COVID-19, protests against racism, climate change. The one that is relatively recent that we're really proud of is the international political events. This is a fantastic way for us to collect ongoing and sort of spur and things that are unexpected, protests, but also general elections. And this archive is a way to sort of keep track of all the various events that are happening around the world. External, just quickly, we do also collaborate with Consult and a group called IV+. So we have a global social responses to COVID-19, and then an ongoing Indian government serials web archive. John, I will hand it over to you.
All right, thanks, Charlotte. So I'm doing kind of a time check here, so we might be going quickly through some of this, the remaining content, but in talking with Dr. Sangeeta, we'll have a PDF one-pager with all of these links. I know we're throwing a lot of links at you here, with all of the necessary information for everybody's reference afterwards. But now in this portion, I just want to give a couple examples of some of the work, some of the projects that Charlotte and I have done over the last few years, starting with a recent project that we did to catalog some of our Sanskrit materials. So, and as Charlotte mentioned, not everything that we have in the rare book collection is in the online catalog, because a lot of our materials are not yet cataloged because they require a lot of specialized knowledge and specialized skills in order to create metadata and the records. So for this problem, we had all of these Sanskrit uncatalogued materials. We were fortunate enough to hire a cataloger who is still with us, works with us on site in Washington, DC. And he was able to do records for both Sanskrit and Tibetan language materials. And the long short of it is that we were able to create about 230 records for our Sanskrit rare manuscripts that had been uncatalogued, some for decades and decades, many decades actually. And those are now discoverable in the online catalog. And having those records is a prerequisite before we could ever think about a digitization project. And part of my task in helping our cataloger is helping to read some very difficult handwriting, helping to revise the transliteration, and then doing some research to find some e-texts that we have of other editions of these manuscripts, which really was an aid in creating the necessary metadata. So this slide here will show just a couple examples of what we were working on. On the far left is a portion of the Samaveda, the Chandasi Samhita, and this one is dated in the Western calendar to 1626. So it makes it one of the oldest manuscripts that we have in our collection. In the middle is an illustrated complete manuscript of the Gajendra Mokshana Stotra from 1802. And on the right was one of our most challenging manuscripts. We were talking with experts in the field to help get some feedback to decipher this manuscript. This is a 19th century folding manuscript from Nepal, Tyasapu, and it's on the body's chakras. It's richly illustrated, and this is actually a manuscript that's in Sanskrit and has Nawari in it as well. So, in addition to cataloging, we also do projects for digitization. So these next few slides will take you through a very brief look at one of these projects and how much work is involved. So we focused this previous couple years on Hindustan, the newspaper that Charlotte had mentioned. So this is a newspaper that was published in Hindi and Urdu in Germany during World War I, and Hindustan was actually published for South Asian prisoners of war who were held in German camps during the war. And because it was published by Germany's Foreign Office, Hindustan was actually a pro-German propaganda newspaper, meaning that it reported on Germany's battlefield victories, only its victories. It talked about German superior technology and things like that. So at the Library of Congress, we have this unique set of almost a complete run of all issues of Hindustan in these two editions. About 80 issues that were published between 1915 and 1918. But before we could digitize them, we had to do some conservation work, because you can see here on the left, the issues of Hindustan came to us years and years and years ago in these old, oversized, but not really form-fitting blue folders. And the problem was the Hindustan issues were stored here. The folders were not the appropriate size. The edges of the newspaper would stick out. The paper over time curled and folded back, and so that issues would get stuck together. So it was really hard to handle. There was also a distinct amount of tearing and that curling and folding leading to damage that had to be fixed by our conservators. And ultimately what we decided to do was to take them out of this one folder and put each issue in its individual acid-free folder. It increased the shelf space and the weight of the collection item, but it also gave us the ability to handle them in the safest way possible so that we could give them to our scan team and get them scanned and digitized, which we did over the last year. And so you can see on this slide, this just shows the online interface. This is another thing that we do in our project development work, is we talk with our digital content management team about how to best present digitized materials online. And a serial challenges because you want people to be able to find a specific issue. You also want them to be able to browse issues. So this just shows kind of what they look like within the South Asian digital collection. Speaking of which, I did want to talk a bit about this. This is new and kind of exciting for us. It was launched in 2024, and we'll share the link for the collection afterwards in that one pager. It's relatively small. It's only about 1,000 items or so far, but they're all from the Library of Congress. And it has a few notable items. So it has that Hindustan newspaper, the Hindi Urdu editions. It also has the library's Gandhara scroll, which is about 2,000 years old. It's a Buddhist scroll on birch bark that's fully digitized and described in our collection. But the key feature about everything in the South Asian Digital Collection is that everything is open access. And by launching the collection last year with its current size at about 1,000 items, we really wanted to create the foundation for more digitization in the future so that all new LOC digital projects will go into this repository. And on the screen, there are just a couple examples here of what you can find, some more unique items. On the left is a Hindi book on differential calculus, very difficult subject, by the noted mathematician Sudhakar Dwivedi, and this was published in 1886. In the middle is a book in the Braj language that's titled Braj Charitra, and this is from 1896, and it's by Sri Vihari Das Ji, who was the student of Sri Giridas Ji. And what's unique here is that it comes with 16 excellent lithographic illustrations depicting the life and activities of Lord Krishna. And on the right is one of our collection's digitized manuscripts. This is an illustrated edition of the Masnavi Sir al-Bayan in Urdu that's dated to 1890. And as you can see throughout this manuscript, there are some very beautiful miniature paintings in this one as well. Another unique and fully open access resource is the South Asian Literary Recordings Project. This is an LOC project. It was launched about 20 years ago, and it has audio recordings that you can download and stream from the website of 93 prominent South Asian authors reading excerpts of their famous works. Just a few of the names who are included in here: Bhisham Sahani, Shirshindu Mukhopadhyay, Khushwant Singh, and Krishna Sobati. And my hope is that audiences find interest in these recordings for several different reasons. On one hand, I think it's really tailor-made for people who have a passion for, say, Tamil literature, Telugu literature, and many other different languages represented in the collection. But it's also designed, I think, for students who are learning these languages. And it's a good way, I think, to practice listening comprehension while also being able to enjoy literary culture and learn about famous authors in the languages of study as well. And this is just a brief nod and acknowledgement that the Library of Congress is big. We have a lot of different reading rooms. South Asian materials are found throughout the Library of Congress, not just the Asian reading room. So just a couple examples here. We have a prints and photographs division. So anything that would be like a poster, photograph, anything of that sort would go into that division where we have specialists in that specific format. One example of South Asian materials there are a collection of photochromes of Indian religious sites, Indian cities that are from about late 19th century to early 20th century. those are downloadable and viewable on the library's website. The law library is a very important part of the Library of Congress. And this is where all legal materials, treaties, bilateral relations between countries, things like that, any documents like that will go to the law library. And they also have a digitized copy of the Indian Constitution, which is very easy to access, very easy to browse and to read. As Charlotte mentioned previously, we have the African and Middle Eastern division. That's probably the division we work with the closest. Because everything in Persian, even if it comes from South Asia, would be under the purview of African and Middle Eastern Division because they have an Iranian world and Iranian language specialists there. So anything that's produced or related to the Mughals that's in Persian would be in that division. And one of their most beautiful digitized manuscripts is one on the Emperor Shah Jahan from the late 17th, early 18th centuries. This is an important thing to mention here. This is reference work. This is how maybe the most common way we would interact with patrons who might not be able to visit the Library of Congress in person, but still would like to contact us and ask a question about their projects. And this is something that a lot of us who work in libraries, we share this in common. We receive any and all types of reference questions, very specific to the very, very general. A few things to outline in brief of what we do, but what we can't do. So when we're dealing with reference work, and again, this is mostly coming in through that Ask a Librarian link. That's the easiest way to contact us. So we can answer questions about our collections. We can recommend books on a particular subject, like short bibliographies. We can easily, do that and kind of point you in the right direction. Digital resources too. We also have a great knowledge of things that are available online outside the Library of Congress that might be fitting for your project. But of course, what we can't do, we can't write a paper. We can't do homework assignments for people. We can't provide feedback on a paper or a thesis or anything like that. We can't do original research like a research assistant would. So that's one thing we can't do. Another thing we can do is that we can scan and send a book chapter or an article or maybe a few issues of a newspaper that you're looking for over email if that's what you need for your personal study, your reference, and your research. One thing to note is that we do have a limit. We can only do about 25 scans per item, which means about 50 pages. What we cannot do, we cannot provide soft copies of entire books. We cannot provide full PDF scans of books that are under copyright. And furthermore, we don't own the copyright of the collection items that we have, so we can't grant permission, we can't contact copyright holders. That's something that's outside the scope of our reference services. And one more note here about our research guides. So this is another activity that Charlotte and I do on the kind of a regular basis. We'll be sending a link with all of these guides that you can find on our Asian Reading Room website. But it's just a note that we do have one for the South Asian collection, and that's a really good starting point because it gives you the biggest, most comprehensive view of South Asia at the Library of Congress, beginning in the Asian Reading Room and then going to the places like the Law Library and the Prints and Photographs Division and others. We also have these guides that are on specific subjects. We have one on our manuscripts. The newspapers guide with a list of all of our newspapers in the collection. That's a very popular one. Charlotte has an extensive series of guides on the ephemera collection to help people find things in that collection. So we would invite people to check those out, of course, if you have the time, or reach out to us, with questions about that. Charlotte, I'll give it over to you, and just as we're kind of watching the time a little bit, right?
Yes. Quickly going to run through a few of our social media outlets. First is our blog. Highly recommend subscribing to our blog. It's called Four Corners of the World. This is the general international collections blog. Really the best way to find out about collections and items that that you may not come across as you're searching through our catalog and everything. In addition, just a quick plug, all of the Library of Congress blogs are really fantastic resources, and our blog is not the only place to find information about the internet, about international items. Next slide. In addition to our blog, we have a Facebook page. These are going to be sort of more short snippets, announcements of releases, announcements of events, but also, again, just sort of short little pieces about materials that we want to highlight. Next slide. Group visits and displays. John and I do a lot of those. We have folks coming from universities, from North America, but also from South Asia. And in addition to that, we have folks coming from the embassy. So both from all South Asian embassies. So you'll see that we had a couple of visits. Just these are some photos. We have also had, we participate in displays with other divisions that they may be holding events, and so we will go and display some of the items that are related to any of the events that we're invited to take part in. Next slide. Recent events. John and I also put on a number of events, usually one per year, just sort of depending on our bandwidth. Putting on these events takes a lot of work, a lot of time, but we love having the opportunity to bring in new folks who may not know about the work that we're doing. So, for example, in 2019, John put together a fantastic event that and a number of these are sort of in-person events, especially pre-COVID. Post-COVID, we're really focusing on doing hybrid events. During COVID, we did entirely virtual events. Upcoming book talk with Daniel, and I'm going to butcher his last name, Makrovitz. This is going to be a book talk about his recent publication, The World in Words, Travel Writing in Muslim South Asia. Daniel was with us as a Florence Tan Mosen Fellow, and so this book, he worked with the library collection, so we want to highlight some of his work and the time that he spent with us. Next slide, please. And also, sorry, a quick note on those events, that a number of those, we do have recordings available. So if you weren't able to tune into any of those, it is possible to go onto the library's website and view those recordings as well. So if you saw something in that list that interests you, that was not a one and done. Library service. John and I also take part and are involved in a number of external groups. Earlier on in this talk, I talked about CONSULT, Committee on South Asian Libraries and Documentation. This is a committee that is part of the South Asian Council. That South Asia Council is part of the Association for Asian Studies. Our focus, again, on the development of library resources in North America and beyond. We do also work with a number of libraries and librarians who are based in South Asia through CONSULT. In addition to that, we have the South Asian Cooperative Development Group. This is sort of adjacent to CONSULT. Not everyone who's a part of CONSULT takes part in this SECOOP group. We meet once every year. This is during the there's a large South Asian conference that happens at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Every year that we meet, there is a specific theme. Themes include niche collections, South Asian government serials. So as we transition from print materials to digital materials, the question of how do we continue to get to collect and acquire those government serials. This really seeks to broaden both the scope and depth of coverage of South Asian resources, spanning all subjects and formats. And that gives us also a chance to hear more about the collections at other North American libraries, which is really fantastic. Next slide, please. Library, an additional sort of library service project that John and I, that we are at least aware of, that has been put together by involvement from Consult and also a lot of involvement with the New Delhi and Islamabad office, is the Subject Authority Cooperative Program funnel that focuses on South Asia. So what this group does, you'll see at the top there is a link for their homepage. What this group does is it aims to facilitate cooperation between catalogers, subject librarians, scholars, and general community stakeholders to improve discovery for and access to South Asia materials. They're really dedicated on developing a framework for proposing new South Asia-related Library of Congress subject headings, LCSH, and new classification numbers for the Library of Congress classification system in general. This involves proposing changes to outdated, inaccurate, and harmful South Asia-related Library of Congress subject headings. These are these are legacy problems, and also just sort of the constant updating of terms that are really meant to be more cognizant of culturally appropriate terminology. So just right there, and this is again in close collaboration with Consult, you'll see at the bottom that in that screenshot right there, this is just an example of one of those terms that the SACO funnel, it's called SACO, that the SACO South Asia funnel has been working on. Next slide, please. A couple of internal Library of Congress service projects that we are working on: inclusive description and digital accessibility. So the library has a special collections inclusive description group. This is sort of similar goal that the SACO funnel has, except this is sort of internal to the library. Really identifying the need for the library to start investing in using inclusive vocabulary and culturally respective language when it comes to describing collections. And this includes sort of future, current, and legacy collections. This specifically in relation to finding aids, research guides, and catalog records. The initial focus of this group was on the special collections. So that includes geography and maps, prints and photographs, newspapers and periodicals, and really identifying pathways forward, including training. In addition to that, again, internal Library of Congress group, digital accessibility group. This is, when we think of accessibility, we're thinking of experience of usability, equitability, and things and enjoyable by all, including focusing on people with disabilities. So this has included putting together training resources for creating content with inclusive language, writing alt text for images, and writing for also cognitive accessibility. We have regular meetings, largely lunch meetings that are sort of open to the Library of Congress community to discuss evolving accessibility practices and the technology that we use to enhance those accessibility practices. Next slide. Keeping in touch. This is our final slide. This is the best way. There are a couple ways to keep in touch with us. We have listed both John and my personal Library of Congress emails. For general collection questions, you can refer to Ask a Librarian. So that's ask.loc.gov/Asia. If you don't remember that link, you can just type into Google Ask a Librarian, Library of Congress, and that link will pop up. Again, general push to subscribe to our Four Corners of the World blog and also the Library of Congress International Collections Facebook page. Thank you. Thank you so much for sticking with us through this presentation. And John and I are more than happy to answer any questions. If you have to head out, just take note of our contact information and please reach out to us. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Jonathan and Dr. Charlotte, for delivering such a truly one of the most enriching, outstanding, exceptionally, brilliant presentation on the digital collection, unearthing the past, for the future. We have been completely being mesmerized, by the work, the humongous work which has been undertaken by Library of Congress. And you simply, Library of Congress deserves a standing ovation by everyone, whosoever is wanting to take a deep dive into the past. Because you have been able to create, basically it's a digital memory, and that has been one of the major projects which I remember that 15-20 years ago what Library of Congress undertook. And you in fact inspired, Library of Congress inspired many more projects, which came later from organizations like UNESCO, the World Memory Project, but the early initiation was done definitely by Library of Congress. We have been completely astonished with the kind of coverage of the collection, especially the South Asian collection that you have been able to, so extensively have focused on this presentation today. And we could see with the kind of messages which are being also, posted in the chat box, that everyone is feeling so much inspired to make the best use of these. And we at DELNET, Dr. Jonathan, Dr. Charlotte, as we just had a discussion, DELNET would be very happy to, in some ways, promote and ensure, that these collections are being utilized to the fullest, because we could see that, the kind of, it's very Herculean task to tap, these resources and preserving it also at the same time. It's not just simply digitizing it. And also we could see that, the kind of, even the obsolescence of the formats happens, and the kind of work which must have been put in at LOC to ensure that you're able to conserve, preserve, and able to keep it, usable, for the generation and describability, the work that you are doing it. So we at DELNET would be very, very happy to play some important role, especially being in India, and especially for our South Asian community over here. We assure you that we remain committed, to be of any assistance to LOC to ensure that this, such a vast, impressive, majestic collections at LOC can become more visible and more usable also at the same time by our South Asian community. It has been such a great honor and pleasure having both of you. We remain truly grateful for all your time and efforts that you have made in being there. And we can see that, as it was it's an inaugural session of this libraries around the world. And we at DELNET were very keen enough. We waited for a long time and we said, no, we would just like to start off with Library of Congress, the largest library in the world. And when we say that, it's not only by the collection size, I think we also need to remember that. And we remember ourselves the time way back in 1997-98 when we used to download the LOC records in the US Mark format and directly getting it imported. And this open mantra, has been adopted by Library of Congress right from the very inception, and that's really commendable. Ensuring that you have an accessibility to the content, equitability at the same time, making it available to everyone. And this has been an eye-opener to many of our professionals here who have joined us on this platform today. And we could see that, the kind of messages which are pouring in the chat box that typically, demonstrates that, yes, they have felt inspired to make the best use of these collections. Thank you so very much, Dr. Jonathan. Thank you so much, Dr. Charlotte. And we will quickly take a couple of, I know that you may have engagements. You are just starting off the day, there. And I'll just pick up a few of the questions. One question that I would like to ask, and Dr. Jonathan or Dr. Charlotte, you may like to respond. How do you take care of this obsolescence of the format? Especially you had mentioned that you still have collections which you are having in the microfilm and microflash. In countries like India, we typically have the issues here because there have been some of the best of the collections, the archival collections, which didn't could get migrated into the digital form. And then you don't have, the equipments now. You don't have a microfilm readers. Even if you have a microfilm, you don't have the readers. How do you tackle this issue while being there? Because you had mentioned it in your presentation that some of the collections are still there, and why we are not able to migrate, into the digital. And don't you foresee that in the years to come, in the decades to come, we may be losing out on that particular, on that content, if we are not able to migrate. So this obsolescence of the format, and especially because of the non-availability of the adequate, equipments, hardware, on which we can run that, how do we tackle those issues? Because at LOC, you are handling such a huge, collections, and the formats definitely is one of the concern. How do you take care of this transition, and how well do we do that? How are you able to, address these particular issues?
Sure, that's a great question, and it's one that everybody at the Library of Congress, let alone other libraries, that we're thinking about right now. Microfilm is very important for our collection. And that's because all of our newspapers at the Library of Congress, I believe we subscribe to something like 80 different titles from South Asia. With a few exceptions, all of those are on microfilm. And they have been on microfilm for decades, for years, since the overseas offices were established. I see a lot of pros in microfilm, even though it's somewhat antiquated, but the current microfilm material, if under good preservation, will last for 500 years, so it's fairly durable. It enables us to store a lot of material right now in relatively less shelf space compared to if we were acquiring print issues. But you're right, exactly. It requires a barrier of access because you have to have the microfilm reader to be able to do it. So there are a lot of conversations, and I believe there's ultimately plans to what they say sunset the microfilm program and go entirely digital with our collections. For new digitization, new acquisitions, they would be digital formats. One obstacle there is money, is the funding that's necessary for that technology, for that training, and for that kind of expertise and know-how. And I don't think we're quite there yet in a systematic way to completely replace the microfilm program. Another aspect that I have my attention on is loaning and lending. Microfilm requires the microfilm reader, yes, but we can loan out. We do national loans. We don't do as many international loans with collection materials, but we loan nationally microfilm reels. If that material is in copyright and on our Stacks database, which is for in copyright material, we don't quite have a digital lending policy yet. And a lot of libraries are kind of struggling with that. Like, exactly how do you have controlled digital lending of material? So that's a concern that's coming up right now. So I think undeniably, if you're taking the long-term view, is microfilm is going away. We would try to digitize the microfilm we have, which is, again, that's more money, more resources, more things like that. But we're not quite at the Library of Congress there, where we're seeing a complete replacement of microfilm with digitization. In the future, yes, but not quite yet. Charlotte, do you want to add anything?
Yes.
Charlotte, audio.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Another problem that that John and I have identified when it comes to accessing, when it comes to using specifically digitized serials, is that when it comes to our platform, which is, as John mentioned, Stacks, copyright. So when a researcher goes onto our Stacks platform to access a copyrighted newspaper, you cannot, and this is an internal library problem that John and I struggle with, is the way that Stacks operates. You cannot save pages as a PDF because of our copyright restrictions, and all of that is all of this is decided by our lawyers, our Office of General Counsel. These are the restrictions that we kind of struggle with when it comes to using microfilm. If someone were to come into our reading room, or if someone from if a researcher from India, Pakistan reaches out to us, and John and I can use our microform reader to get things over to those researchers. Our microform technology allows us to copy paste, take entire PDFs, PDF scans of, say, the front page of a newspaper, save those as PDFs, and send those as soft copies. But if a researcher comes in, they have limited access through a specific computer terminal, and in order to save a page or whatever, they have to print that out, and that is that's definitely a restriction. And so if they unfortunately, they have recently made printing a free service that we have at the library. But again, if you want to come in and you're looking to save pages and pages and do extensive searching through a newspaper, and you want to save a bunch of PDFs, you're just printing out pages and pages of stuff, and that's just not how researchers are interacting with the archives anymore. They're not looking to like print out like 50 pages of a particular newspaper. They want to save PDFs. They want to copy and paste. So that's another problem that we have when it comes to trying to transition to digitized things from microform.
Now, one more question, which I can see that in the chat box, couple of the users have asked that whether they can visit, the regional offices or the country offices of Library of Congress to access to the material. Means when we are talking about that this material, it's not that everything that they can download or get the PDFs. So whether anyone, means any researcher, scholar, can walk into the respective field offices of LOC across, or is it like again meant only for
the field offices are basically acquisition offices. They're not libraries where access is granted, for, it's not like a public public facility.
But Dr. Jonathan, just a question to you. Today in this world of, when everything and anything and everything is being accessible, so accessibility and equitability when we think about, and also the inclusivity, how do you think that LOC is such a most, I won't say even a gigantic and, in the collections and all, but also at the same time, it's a people's oriented, library. How do you really think about, means because resources, still there are a kind of, the constraints are being there. We are, because as you said that, yes, we can't send anything, and we do fully respect and appreciate the copyright concerns which are being there. But at the same time, there's not much of, because there's not much of archival material. And if we look at it, some of them would perhaps be out of copyright also now, because these are very, very old. Like, for example, in India, when we think about, so after 60 years from the death of the author, the material is out of copyright. Let's say we talk about Rabindranath Tagore. So, his collections now, they are entirely out of copyright. So how do you, because, this access to information, when we think about a universal access to information, you have got such the world's memory is there with you. And other important aspect, that we have been thinking about, this migration from microfilm, because you have not much of material which is country specific too. And when I say this, like, because, for example, not much of content which is India specific, it is India collections, which even many of the premier Indian government institutions may like to fund to see to it that they get a digital copy of it. Fine, you have got the regional with you, and if, to at least see to it, because again comes the question accessibility, because otherwise it becomes something which is accessible only to the chosen few. And then we are not really very participative in that knowledge sharing. It still remains to the privileged few who can come down and can have an access, and then we are somewhere. So are there any initiatives by LOC, because you do have, we are fully aware these are acquisition offices, to build up collaborations? We are coming to that point, what we initially, prior to the webinar, we were discussing about it. how really to build up this collaboration, because you can have, it's a multi-party kind of involvement. And there can be, for example, on this forum today, I'm aware about it. You were mentioning about this Sanskrit and Tiptya, the problem that you have been encountering in getting them cataloged, and you have you have got the catalogers now. So even, for example, in collaborative environment, you can have a crowdsourcing done, because you would have the people who are aware about that and who can tell you that what is this manuscript all about. Are there any initiatives by LOC for building up this collaboration among the worldwide committee?
Yeah, there's so many things I want to say. That's so very, very, very rich. I mean, that's the turn towards open access initiatives is not terribly old. I guess it's still relatively new. There's a lot of things that are gaining steam, but it's only in the last maybe 5 or 10 years that things are actually starting to happen. So in terms of initiatives, the Library of Congress, I'll say on the Library of Congress side first, and then the field on the other side. The Library of Congress is also very big administratively. So we have a lot of digital projects in our mind now that we want to do. Digitizing the microfilm, digitizing the manuscripts that are newly cataloged, all things like that. There's a very, very, very long queue that we have to stand in line for. And not only us, because we're in the South, and it's also a little bit of a meditation on South Asian studies as a field within the larger field of Asian studies. Sometimes when people think of Asian studies, a lot of the attention goes to the CJK, Chinese, Japanese, Korean collections. So South Asia is it's an interesting kind of positionality right there. And even within the de facto library, National Library of the United States, which has a lot of things that are related to presidents and American history and American cultures and American traditions, we're always fighting and advocating for the international collections to get that space in the digital projects queue, things of that sort. So that's one thing that kind of slows things down. And I always say sometimes with the Library of Congress, we operate on 2 different schedules. It's either we're thinking of a project 10 years in the future, or it's like, can you have that to me by Wednesday? It's one of those kind of 2 time schedules. Copyright is a big thing. We have the U.S. Copyright Office at the Library of Congress. We have as Charlotte mentioned, our Office of General Counsel has been fantastic and very supportive of us, because we have all of these questions about an Indian author. We know the birth date. It's passed away. He's passed away. She's passed away. Can we send this book as a full scan because it's outside of copyright? And our Office of General Counsel works with us on a case-by-case basis. But they take into account things not only U.S. copyright law, Indian copyright law, Nepal copyright law, but international copyright law. So there's a lot of factors that are in play there. For collaboration, I'll say one more thing, I'll turn over to you, Charlotte, is that I would want to plug, and I don't think we didn't mention this here, the South Asia Open Archives, SAOA, S-A-O-A. South Asia Open Archives is the major open archive initiative within the South Asian studies field. It's a consortium of mostly US North American libraries, 24 or so. They have come together with this idea of funding digital projects for digitization that are only those that can be made fully open access. So not restrictions, not things like that. So I think closer collaboration with the Library of Congress, yes, but we're also kind of like a connector to SAOA and to, as Charlotte mentioned, CONSALD, C-O-N-S-A-L-D. That's the major library association. And it's through those kinds of groups where there's a lot of people and a lot of resources. It's more than even us. So, we're trying to do what we can within a big institution, but we'd also put people in touch with those groups that are really dedicated full stop to South Asia open access digitization. Charlotte?
That's simply great.
Yeah, no, I'll just again do the same thing, plug Consult. They have the other North American libraries that we work with. Whenever John and I receive a reference question where we can't access it, but we know that there are other avenues of electronic access, we we will do our research beyond the bounds of what we have access to of what we have at the Library of Congress. We will look to other libraries, both in the US and internationally, to really try to find what that researcher needs. So if someone reaches out to us, we don't have it or we can't provide access or for whatever reason, John and I will really try to find other ways, other institutions that may have it. We'll do a quick plug also for our electronic resources. Well, a number of the electronic resources that we have access to at the library are subscription-based, which requires that folks come on site. That being said, if there are articles or anything that folks can find that they see that they want access to, John and I are able to provide access to those, like download PDFs on, again, a case-by-case basis. But we do also have a large list of free electronic resources that John and I have just sort of like continued building that list. And that includes free databases from all over the world. So that's just kind of like a good hub also for researchers to look for those free, openly accessible resources. I will also quickly say that we do have, again, this is case-by-case basis, really need to get in touch with John and I personally to check on this. Fair use law, what is that? I think it's 108E, and that is really specifically for scholars, graduate students, college students who need access to an item that they cannot get anywhere else. And John and I rely on WorldCat to give us that information. So if someone reaches out to us, if it's an item that is usually older, 7 years old, we will not provide that, again, case-by-case basis, through interlibrary loan, or if we are the only holding library. But we understand that a researcher needs access to that because it is nowhere else. We're working with our Office of General Counsel, and if they say yes, we can provide a full scan of that. And that includes in copyright items. That being said, case-by-case basis. So we cannot always provide those full soft copy scans, but we do often get permission if we can show that the request comes from a university library, which is clearly for someone who is not looking to reproduce that. Yeah.
So we would be very happy, this is for both of you, Dr. Jonathan and Charlotte, that DELNET will be happy to, because we provide an access to around 45 million records, which are available across our institutions. And we are the only organization in India, and for that matter, let me also say for entire South Asian countries, when we think about, we do the interlending. Interlibrary loan is one of our most popular service across the country and even outside India that we are engaged with. So we'll be very, very happy to explore the possibility. And it's like a mutual collaboration. Then when any of our Indian scholars, and for that matter, anyone from South Asia, they're looking for any material which we are not able to lay hands on, we can approach LOC. And likewise, LOC, as you said that you are already doing with consoles, or you are, saying you're looking into the WorldCat, we can be of help because we have this huge resources of these 9,700 institutions, and we provide an access, and we can, within no time, we will be able to, help out that who has got, and also to get you an access to that particular resource. So it's like bridging up to work more as a bridgers, and to help the the user community, the researchers and scholars. So from wherever, and it's like it's more like a unification of our efforts, to ensure that we have an access to the information which is being required. So we'll be really happy to explore, that possibility of working together and to help out the user community, and fairly with the, with the fair use, seeing that yes, it's required genuinely by researchers and scholars, and how well, we can meet their requirements. It has been such a great pleasure. We really would like to take this. This has just been an initiation, And this has been such a wonderful way. We could have never thought of or could have imagined to have started this entire series of libraries around the world. And we remain truly appreciative, greatly admire, the efforts of both of you. And also, we always admire the great work being undertaken at LOC. And it is again for the entire globe. You are bringing resources together, and that's for the global community. And it's highly commendable. And we really are feeling so very delighted that we have been able to, initiate this entire dialogue. And we know that we have really, started off. We have just charted the new paths for collaboration, and in the days to come, we'll see to it. So this is to inform all our colleagues over here who have been there, because they have been questions that how they can access the LOC resources. So we at DELNET from India would like, we'll make our best efforts to approach LOC and our very distinguished colleagues over there, to see to it if we can get gracious support and we can offer, some kind of, collaboration to ensure that we have a better utilization of these resources which are being there. It's an immense pleasure now for me to present, and we will ensure that these jewel-studded elephants reaches. Let me share with you, I visited Library of Congress. This is for both of you, Dr. Jonathan and Charlotte. I visited LOC in 2012. June 2012, yes, and under this IVLP, International Visitors Leadership Program, and what a memorable, I still have very vivid memories of the visit. And this was also to revisit them, by looking at the pics, and has been all made possible because of both of you. With great sense of admiration, gratitude to both of you for commencing this, a series of libraries around the world. And you have been able to make it possible for us to initiate this with such one of the most brilliantly delivered session, and not just simply a talk. This is also, as I said, it has, started off. We have initiated a dialogue, making connections, building collections. We have been, so it's from building collections to making connections, and yes, inching towards making, more collaborations. And that's what, we all in the library fraternity aim to do that. And it has just been made possible because of both of you being there with us today. May I have a pleasure of presenting these? They're identical ones. They're exactly the identical ones. And being together as the two distinguished speakers, both of you have been together in this session, making it truly a memorable, day for us. And I'll ensure, so with a great sense, please do accept it virtually right now, and we'll ensure that they land at LOC, they land, safely, and we'll be really happy that they take, in the background, we can find them when we meet next online, and we'll be really, really happy, to see it. Thank you so very much indeed. A big thank you from DELNET, and also from each one of the participants who have been here. And also my very special thanks again to Chaya, who was instrumental in making it possible for us. And, it would not have been possible otherwise for us. Thank you so very much once again, Dr. Jonathan, and also Dr. Charlotte, for delivering one of the most fabulous, most impactful, and truly, and not only an engaging, but truly an inspiring talk. And we assure you from this part of the globe, and we are feeling so very happy and blessed to see, both of you who are really, putting so much of efforts, and, also an organization, LOC, that to preserve the past, it's for the generations to come. And we, from this part of the globe, assure you that we will truly feel happy enough and would be a pleasure to be of any assistance in seeing to it that we are able to, help our user community in more effective ways. Thank you so very much once again, and thank you for giving us. We could see that, right now it's 11:30. Yeah, got 11:30 right now. Yes, yeah. Thank you so much for giving us so much of your time and efforts. We have truly, truly, remained grateful to you. And we really look forward to having many more opportunities to interact with both of you and to help our user community. Thank you so very much, Dr. Jonathan and Dr. Charlotte. And we also would like to thank all our colleagues who have been able to join us from different nooks and parts. My very special thanks to my own colleagues here at DELNET, Mr. Kushal, Giri Goswami, and Mrs. Ranjana for assisting us. May I request Dr. Jonathan, Dr. Charlotte, just a two-liner message you may like to give to our colleagues from across.
Oh, sure. Well, just thank you. Much appreciation for everybody at DELNET. DELNET is an organization I've heard of for forever, and I've always wanted to learn more. So this was a fantastic opportunity for us. I'm very, very thankful to you, Dr. Sangeeta, for inviting and for organizing, and to Ms. Chaya and everybody at DELNET. And I definitely hope to hear from scholars, researchers, and especially our librarian colleagues all throughout South Asia and all throughout the world with any questions about the LOC and our collections. Charlotte?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. God bless. God bless all of you. Stay blessed, stay connected, and we really look forward to having you back again, in the future webinars. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Dr. Jonathan, Dr. Charlotte. Have a great ahead, and thank you so very much indeed. Much grateful, much grateful. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day. We'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye. Bye. Thanks. Bye. Bye.